Hello everyone, I want to make sure you're ready for our midterm test. So remember back when we were talking about independent and dependent variable, I want to make sure you understand that the independent variable is the cause and the dependent variable is the consequence. It's the result of the study. So independent is the cause and dependent is the effect. All right. Also want to make sure that you understand, when we were just talking about sampling, that more people is less error, and the more error there is, the less representative the sample is. So if we overrepresent, underrepresent certain groups, there's more error, and as that error grows, it's less representative. Okay, so more sampling error is less representative. There's a question on there about census and probability, and in our lectures we didn't talk much about probability, but probability of 1 is 100%, right? And probability of being in a non-probability sample is unknown. So just know that a census is supposed to be 100% chance of being included. That said, anytime in a true-false question where we say something is always, question whether or not it's always true. Okay, so probability of being a census is usually a little bit less than 100% because you should be, but homeless people or people that have multiple homes or travel internationally, they might miss being included. So probability being a census isn't always less than 1. It could be 1, but anytime you say always, hesitate on whether that's always true, because it's not always true. When we're thinking about sampling and how we sample, know that we're sampling for diversity, right? We want to make sure we represent the diversity. If everyone is the same on some way, so the word we use for that is homogeneous, if everyone is the same, then we don't need to sample for that trait. So we're sampling for traits that there's diversity. So if everyone is identical, then we don't need to sample. You can just pick people and any of them should be the same. Also on the quiz, we talked about the different ways that you would collect qualitative data. And remember that qualitative data is used to explore ideas. And we begin exploratory research with qualitative work. And anytime we want to prove things are true, then and explain, then we need to do quantitative work. So we can only prove things with deductive, quantitative work. But if we just want to explore, then it's going to be inductive, qualitative work. Also, we talked about population and sampling frame and sample and elements. Those are the different layers of finding people. And so when we're looking at the individual characteristics of people, the individual people are the elements, and those elements are by default in the sampling frame and later part of the sample. Also, when we're thinking about measurements, we had talked about ordinal, nominal, ratio level data. And remember, if there's a true zero, so something like age, then it's ratio level, right? If it's something like race or gender, it's nominal because we can assign numbers to it, but the numbers aren't meaningful. If there's order and that order is consistent, like temperature, but the zero is not necessarily meaningful as 0, then it's ordinal. So temperature in degrees Fahrenheit is an example of ordinal measurement. Okay. There's a question about when we want to generalize data, we collect the data from everyone and we want to make it generalized to everyone. Who is it that we're trying to generalize it to? and we're trying to generalize it to the population level, okay? And it doesn't have to be the population of everyone. It could be the population of students at UTA, or the population of people addicted to drugs, population of people who are depressed, whatever population it may be. So that's when we're generalizing, we're trying to generalize to the population level. Yeah, and know that with ethics, you recall that there was certain unethical experiments, and you'll need to know the difference between what's labeled as the little. Anyway, there are a bunch of experiments that done, and you need to list which one was representative of people in the 1930s. And you remember the Tuskegee experiment was the unethical experiment done in the 1930s, but that continued all the way into the 1970s, 40 years of where the experiment ignored the treatment. One of the questions on the midterm is related to one of the very first slides when we talked about different ways that we can collect information and use systematic reviews. And there were a couple of systematic review sources listed there. And you remember the Campbell collaboration was one of those sources that you could put search words and find out all the key findings for what is familiar, what has been discovered, what interventions work for particular issues. So the Campbell collaboration is an organization that does those systematic reviews. There's a question on there looking at some sort of systematic way for finding participants in a study. And just know that if you're looking for a systematic way, you could just take the total number of people you're looking for and divide it by the number of people you want to find. So take the total, divide it by the number. That will give you a systematic way of finding people. Remember, there's different ways for collecting data, different sampling procedures, and you just need to know the difference between the different methods, whether it's a probability sampling where there's a random process involved, or a quota sampling where you have a set number of each group, whether it's purposive sampling. Purposive sampling is the idea that you looking very specifically for people that meet specific criteria, and you'll take anyone you find that meets that criteria. That's purposive sampling. And snowball sampling, where one person introduces you to other people that you might collect information from. And then there's a question on there about nominal ordinal interval ratio and what kind of math that you could do with those numbers. And just know that with nominal data, you can't do math. With ratio data, you can do any kind of fancy math that you want to. And that's why we try to use ratio level coding whenever possible. And when we're thinking about of the random processes, which process is the least random, know anytime you have a systematic way of counting people, if it's systematic counting, then it's not random. And on the PowerPoint slide, it refers to the kth element, where they use the letter K to represent any number. On the test, they refer to nth element, but nth or kth, either way, is referring to a systematic counting unit, whether it's every third person as used in the slide, or every 10th person as used on the test here. And that's it. So I think you'll be well prepared for the midterm exam if you understood what I was telling you here. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you very much.